Hey folks, today I want to share some brief thoughts on the topic of race relations and why it seems so difficult these days for us to have open and honest dialogues on the topic. When I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s here in South Africa, the bulk of my historical education took the form of learning about apartheid. For those of you who don't know, apartheid was the system of laws and practices that racially segregated white South Africans from non-whites and gave white South Africans unfair preferential treatment under the law. At the outset, I want to say that I fully believe and agree that apartheid was a moral injustice on a grand scale. It is morally unacceptable to segregate people on the basis of their race, particularly with the use of state power or the monopoly of government force. However, I think that one of the reasons why many white people are defensive on the subject of racial reconciliation is that within mainstream education, there is a tendency to be historically revisionist. What I mean by that is that when we learn about historical events, there's this tendency for us to be taught or for it to be implied that white people are the only group guilty of atrocities throughout the course of human history. And that simply isn't the case. I can fully understand the importance of learning about the damage apartheid did and largely still does to black people in South Africa. But what I don't like is the idea that white people are uniquely guilty of having committed evil deeds or wrongdoing. Because the fact is, all human beings are capable of monstrous things, and we are all capable of great evil. The problem is, when you say that, as a white person, you're immediately accused of kind of deflecting or trying to dodge blame, which you have a responsibility to own up to. The thing is, it goes back to the idea of collective guilt and responsibility. People who argue this way believe that white people today, purely by virtue of being white, are somehow responsible for the actions of white people who came before them, even if they died hundreds of years ago. And I think that collective guilt is something that holds us all back from progressing as a society, because it's possible, if you go through history with a fine-tooth comb, to find grievances between groups of all kinds at all points in history. And if all we do is focus on what others have done wrong to us in the past, that energy is wasted, where it could in fact be channeled into building a more prosperous and harmonious future for all of us, regardless of our race or cultural differences. I'm not saying this to excuse the wrongs that were done in the past, but the fact is, the wrongs of the past happened, and no amount of obsession or kind of outrage culture can change the fact that they did happen. All people alive today can do is to try our very best to move forward in the most courteous and fair-minded way possible. Because none of us have a time machine, and even if we did, the idea of changing history to suit our personal moral standards is a very dangerous thought, because we as modern people cannot understand fully what it was like to live in those times, because moral standards change over time. Humans grow, humans develop. It's part of what makes us different from other living creatures. So what I'm saying is, if we are to have open dialogues about the subject of race relations, which at the best of times is difficult because it's such a touchy subject, we need to come into it open-minded and without a mentality of blame or guilt, because neither blame nor guilt will get anyone anywhere. Have a good day, and for now, farewell.